Welcome viewers. In today's episode, r/AskReddit. Those of you from the early days of the internet, what online mysteries do you remember that remain unsolved? Whether My Immortal, famously the worst fanfiction of all time, was written by a troll or not. Personally, I think it takes immense amounts of talent to write that badly. It's like the saying that a broken clock is right twice a day. A badly written story with an author that is really trying should still have occasional redeeming qualities. My Immortal is bad in a fractal sense. Every individual part is just as bad as the whole. That strongly suggests it was intentional. Anybody remember cutoffmyfeet.com? A guy had terrible foot pain and wanted to amputate, so the website said. He was taking donations for entry into a contest to be the person who, via the internet, would be able to push a keyboard key that activated a homemade guillotine to remove his affected feet. The whole thing was planned out with a scheduled date and audience. Ambulance would be already called. Never heard what happened. Remember the guy that took a big nail and slowly nailed his foot to a wooden floor, on camera? I never saw this, but this reminds me of something I heard about years ago called the Pain Olympics, and a guy cut off part of his dick every year? The Pain Olympics were made by Shannon Larott with the use of makeup and in-camera effects. Now there are definitely people out there who get sexual pleasure from mutilating themselves. That just isn't an example of it. Cracked had an article about this. I know, but there was an old forum a girl had about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I think? Where she had over 40k posts, all by herself. As in, she would make topics and reply to them as the series progressed, or she watched seasons and episodes. IIRC 4chan caught wind and started raiding, so she deleted the site altogether. I really wish I had more context, because it seems so interesting. The bloody board. 40k posts before it was raided. That cracked article was super misleading, however. The poor girl got majorly harassed, but she wasn't making posts all by herself. It was a fan site for a specific Buffy actor, and it had a solid number of users who were active on different boards. However, there was one dedicated board just for news updates. This girl was posting news about the actor just basically as a feed for the fans. Maybe a little obsessive but not creepy, and not some single person posting endlessly by herself. 4chan and Cracked spread this news and destroyed her fan site. Edit, thankfully she recovered from having her website destroyed, and she is still obsessed with James Marsters. Now she uses Twitter instead. Gringecko.com/torment was crazy to me. I don't remember how I found it, but it started you out on this puzzle that wasn't too difficult to solve, but it just kept giving more puzzles with increasing difficulty. I remember having a full notebook from writing stuff down trying to figure out how to solve them. I eventually got stuck and went to some forums to find out there were people who put in some work trying to complete it, but I don't believe anyone ever reached the end. They eventually took it down, and the creator put up a new series of puzzles that was solved within the first couple days. I was always curious what was at the end of that GRN Gecko puzzle. That website is what made me have a love for puzzles and riddles. That reminds me of Notpron. Notpron's difficulty seemed to scale up pretty quickly though. I remember the one I got stuck on was just a picture of a barn. In the source code it said, "Where was this picture taken?" The solution was to download the picture and look at EXIF data, but my friends and I were all teenagers. That was slightly beyond our experience. I had a previous Reddit account made during the Dig Exodus. This was at least a decade ago when Reddit was pretty new. I came across a post from a guy who swore that a particular website that looked like a generic local news site with the usual AP and Reuters news feeds was actually a government-run intelligence program. It functioned like a numbers station in plain sight. Meaning that the exact wording used would match up with a one-time use pad and provide intelligence info. I cannot remember the exact website, but it looked unimpressive, and the domain was registered in Bahrain, despite appearing to cater to a mid-size US city. He then said he was being harassed in real time since he made that post. Then he said he got doxxed and strangers were calling him telling him to cut it out. I tried to reply to his post a few minutes later, but then found that his Reddit account and every post he made were deleted. What was that all about? Some similar government conspiracy sounding stuff happened to me years ago. I started a VPN business circa 2009, right around the time of the Arab uprising and before the VPN business market was as popular as it is now. Most providers were deploying PPTP and OpenVPN, but I deployed SSTP, which works over port 443, uses regular HTTPS, and worked with the built-in Windows VPN client. Needless to say, in the span of about 3 months I had massive signups from China, the Middle East, and Northern African countries. I never made an effort to hide my identity and ran the business out of my house. One day the proverbial men in black showed up, black suits, sunglasses, black Suburbans, and so on. Only, they had the olive-colored skin of someone who was of Middle Eastern or Northern African descent. They asked for me by name, asked if I ran XYZ VPN service, identified themselves as diplomatic representatives from an embassy in DC, and politely asked me if they could come in and ask me some questions. I was young then, so I said sure, come on in. Well, the meeting didn't last very long. They started asking me if I understood what was happening with the Arab Spring, they referenced Egypt specifically, and if I would block users from certain countries being able to connect to my service if they requested. When I said no, not without a court order, they became agitated and then asked who else was involved in helping me with the business. They then started naming my mom, my sisters, my daughter, who didn't live with me, and several of my close friends. It was the scariest moment of my life, and I was sitting there alternating between panic and disbelief. I told them none of those people were involved, and they said okay, well, why don't you think about what the best thing for you to do is, we will be back in touch. I spoke to some friends in the security world and all of them said to just shut down, even if they didn't do something criminal, they'd probably just sue me into bankruptcy. So after starting a VPN biz and in 3 months having hundreds of customers, I refunded all my customers for any unused services, and shut my doors. Literally overnight. I never heard from nor got a visit from the Middle Eastern men in black again. I remember this random YouTube video where a guy kidnaps a girl and after 10 years, he posted a video titled Happy Anniversary and laughed like hell with some mystery puzzle at the end. That's the disappearance of Maura Murray, and the video was posted on the 8th year. Supposedly the video creator is not involved, just mentally ill and may enjoy the attention. Back in the day there was a site called Bonsai Kitten claiming to sell real kittens grown in glass jars. It was a hoax website, but people actually believed it. Just after the first Harry Potter film was made, there was a creepy website with photos of Hermione's face very badly photoshopped onto various sexy celebs' bodies. There was no nudity, but it was still creepy, especially as he had a countdown clock until Hermione was legal. The mystery, I suppose, is whether the person who made the site was a for real weirdo or if it was some weird sort of parody, satire. I never saw the site again, so don't know how it progressed in later years, and you'd never find it now without getting yourself on some sort of list. There was also the Mary-Kate and Ashley countdown page, which was just a static image of them and the countdown timer ticking away. Literally nothing else, just a huge header, followed by the picture and clock. Not from the early days, but the stories and conspiracies of Cicada 3301 sound amazing. Shame they haven't posted a puzzle in years though, or figured out the last one. The leprechaun sighting in Crichton. I want to know if an entire neighborhood came together to fake it, if something was in the water, a real leprechaun was seen, but most importantly, I want to know where the gold at. Back in the days of war dialing, there were so many weird phone numbers that were discovered that led to weird recordings or just did weird shit. I'd love to hear about what some of those were about. We found one once where it was just some old English-sounding gentleman who answered. You could ask for anyone, even something obviously troll, like, is Garlaxx the Eater of Worlds there, and the man would just reply, oh no, I'm sorry. They are out right now, then hang up on you. We didn't annoy or harass it, but we did call a few times to check if it was still there, and it always was. We always assumed it was some intelligence asset, and if you could say the right thing to it you would activate it. I've always wondered about Ted the Caver. I think his original posts was on GeoCities, but he had this whole blog about going caving in some more unknown areas and hearing, smelling weird noises and deathly flesh similar to a Wendigo. I think Ted the Caver could be called something like creepypasta before creepypasta was a thing. It's clearly fiction, but it's so well written and a shame it didn't become more well known. The Enigma conspiracy theory about Pink Floyd's album, The Division Bell, died with Usenet's popularity before it ever led to either the treasure the band had allegedly hidden somewhere for fans to find or the identity of the person connected with the band who was contributing to the theories. When The Simpsons did the Who Shot Mr. Burns cliffhanger, they had a contest to see if anyone could solve it. On The Simpsons Usenet there was one commenter who solved it using the clues correctly, as opposed to just a lucky guess. The showrunners tried all that they could to find the person but never did. Not necessarily exclusively an internet thing, but the website for the Heaven's Gate cult is still up and maintained. These are the folks that committed group suicide because they believed that if they died when the Hale-Bopp comet was passing they would ride it through a magical gate to paradise. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.